Hey there, Eugene here. I just finished doing a video on the three types of logic: deductive, abductive, and inductive. So deductive, inductive, and abductive would be the order I had them on. And pretty much I realized, they talk about I give some examples, but most people don't realize that depending on the type of system you're working with, the application of logic will depend on that. So I gave some examples, for example, with deductive logic. So deductive logic is if A equals B, B equals C, then A equals C. It's a very linear. So you put an input, an output comes out, and it happens again and again and again. And this will be an example of factory, right? If you have a mathematical equation, this would also be deductive logic. And some social examples apply too. But like I said here, you have physics, chemistry, engineering, etc., closed system, physical systems. These literally apply to deductive logic. So if you're in a closed system and the problem you're trying to solve is in a closed system, including software sometimes, you know deductive logic is most likely going to be applicable. And if you have a company and you're working on a closed system, say for example a factory, you're literally producing something, you know you need to apply deductive logic as you're in a closed system. Again, you have to have a feel for it. It doesn't always apply. But the other type of system is open system. Right? The open system might be closer to, say, customer service. Right? So there are predispositions for things to happen, but it's not certain. Or sales, right? You might have your sales pitch. You might believe it's a good sales pitch, but you might say it 100 times and you might get some different replies. You might get some similar replies, right? But it's not going to be the same. Someone else might use the same pitch. They might get a different result, right? So the input-output is not direct. And in this system, you're applying inductive logic. So say, for example, you wake up, there's water in your window. What caused that? Well, maybe it rained, maybe it was the sprinklers, maybe some kids have a water fight outside when you were sleeping, right? So it's not certain, all right? When you do the premise and conclusion is not certain, but there's a likelihood for this to work. So when you do sales, when you do customer service, there's certain scripts or certain type of questions. Say for example, you're doing sales, you want to ask, what's the pain? Like, what is the problem the potential customer has? And then you provide the value of the product or service by showing how you're going to solve the pain, right? That's kind of by inductive logic. And you believe, well, it seems like this guy has this problem. Maybe if I offer this value, he might be interested in buying, right? That's inductive logic, and that's in an open system. The other thing we have here is complex systems, and this, again, a little more complicated. I'm not going to go over the whole details, but this is more like if you have a software, like an active software, say, kind of like a type of game, like say a chess game, right? Let's forget the software analysis, and I don't want to confuse people that are not aware with it. But say you have like a chess game, right? The point of a complex system is that there's agents. Agents are things that are affecting the system, right? Might be people, might be, if you're in ecology, might be birds and insects, etc., right? These are agents affecting the complex system. The agents affect the system, and vice versa. The system adds pressure and gives possibility to the agents. So it's kind of like this interrelated connection where things happen, and the changes are interacting with each other. So say, for example, a chess game. A chess game is going to start. There's certain rules, there's already constraints going on, but you cannot predict where the chess game is going to go, right? And the behavior, so if player A, first, say, player A does X move, player B's options will be constrained based on the actions of player A. So player A makes their move. Okay, based on that move, now player A has a list of options, and the decision they're going to make is based on the constraints, which is the board and the pieces of the enemy, and their moves are going to be based on those constraints. So that's kind of like explanation of what complex adaptive systems would be. And like I said, a lot of complex games are like basically complex adaptive systems, especially like MMO games, let's say like EVE Online or stuff like that. And actually, you can actually study complex adaptive systems pretty well in certain types of games. But pretty much here, we do a quick overview here, talking about cities, cells, ecosystems. Okay, it's non-linear, right? So it's not a linear system like the closed system. It's emergent, right? So kind of like when I tell you, like the development of the chess game is going to be emerged, right? It's not going to be a guaranteed. It's based on your moves will be a direct base on what the opponent's moves are and vice versa. So it's going to emerge a certain pattern, spontaneous order, adaptation, right? So you're adapting to what's happening, feedback loops, something like that's another thing. So it may or may not happen in certain environments, but like, if you're like in a corporation, you look at the information, okay, what's the financial information? Like what's happening in, if you're, like, say, publicly traded, maybe based on the performance of certain stocks, you may or may not make a move. You might anticipate, well, it seems like X country, it's opened a new trade route or a treaty. Now we can go there, and maybe based on that news, you are now going to make a whole new business decision and go into that country. So that's kind of what a complex adaptive system. Again, if this doesn't make entirely sense, you can go and study what complex adaptive systems are. But in any case, complex adaptive systems, you need to apply abductive logic. And what that is that you don't necessarily know what the hell is going on. There are a lot of unknowns and unknown unknowns. And you have to look at the information, try to find it with clear eyes, and try to make connections that are not obvious. That's also part of abductive logic. So one of the examples I have in the previous videos comes from a book called A Moment of Clarity. I can't pronounce the writer's name. They're like Eastern European. They use an example of Legos, the company, right? So they had anthropologists go ahead and live with families. I believe it was about a week or two. And they would eat with the family, interact with them, go to school, go buy groceries, and they're observing the children and talking to children. And based on this, they made a lot of discoveries of what the children are interested in, right? So what has changed in the modern world from when the bricks were being sold back in the day that makes the children not want to play Legos or play other things like video games. Like video games was a big thing that we're getting into instead of Legos. So you're trying to find a solution, and they discovered that it's not necessarily that the video games are more fun or there's something kind of design to it. What the video games provided was recluse, like it's somewhere where they can have privacy, because the modern kids, they have their whole life schedule. Apparently, they go to school and they come back from school. They got all these classes. They got to go to karate, piano, what have you, and then they had to spend time with the family, etc. So a lot of the children had little to no privacy. So when they played video games with their friends, that's where they could have their privacy. And also, it was a recluse for boys. So boys have what anthropologists would call a ranked society in a lot of cases, where the value of an individual, again, this is males judging males, comes from your skill set. So say, for example, if you are in a sports team, right, and X player might be a jerk, you might hate the guy, right? He might have a different political view than you, religious view, what have you. But he is really good at the game. And you are winning because of him, right? All right, he has status. He has value. You might overlook his flaws. Same with business, right? And the other thing might be you have a really nice guy. Like, you will actually love hanging out with this guy in your free time, but he sucks at sports. And you're losing because of his mess ups. And the same with business, right? If you're in sales, for example, and say you have a team and you're trying to make a quota, and you got some sales reps that are slacking off, doesn't matter how nice they are, you're going to be pissed off at them. You're going to be low status. And vice versa. You might have a guy who has different politics, views, might be a jerk. But if he's closing sales and he's letting your team win, and you're going to get a bonus from that, you will like the guy. He has status. So this was providing a setting the book found, if I remember correctly. I mean, I might be doing a little bit of bias, my own. It's been a while since I read it, but where they could have a competition and the status of the friends could be objectively measured by the performance in the game, right? So, okay, I'm good at this game, you're not, and they argue with that, and they have an excuse to develop skills, etc., which is what we would normally do outside the real world. If you had, like, say, a few hundred years ago, before the technology and the current professional structure existed, where you had to go to school and sit down in the classroom. So if you had, like, back in the day, you had groups of boys hanging together, and a lot of times they were completely isolated from women, and they would have these random societies. And I grew up in Mexico in a similar environment to this, right? Based on your performance in sports, or how good you fight, or maybe, if you're older, how popular you are with the girls. Like, if you can get the hot girl, you have status because you're the guy who has performance skills. And so these games were providing these environments for privacy and ranked societies, etc., and mentorship. So they wanted communication, because a lot of the kids would come back from school, say, for example, and they would just lock themselves in the rooms, and they didn't have, like, boy groups. So what Lego did, they had these groups where older kids were mentors to younger kids on how to build these complex designs. And they had, like, a boys club, and the boys would go there, and the parents were not allowed, what have you, and they would have some time spending with the boys and making these complex Legos and master, etc. And so they try to apply a safe space away from all the concerns modern kids have. Again, lack of privacy, this whole equality BS, like non-competition, which is a pretty popular, say, for example, it became pretty popular since, like, the U.S. in the 1990s. Steven Pinker has the book, The Blank Slate, and since some other similar books talk about this, how they try to eliminate all these competitive stuff, because we're all equal, blah blah blah. So this really pisses off boys, males in general. It's not a male environment. So Legos had this, and their sales skyrocketed once they had a safe space. And by safe space, like I don't mean like popular term of space, where don't insult me, but I'm talking about, like, somewhere where they could actually compete and be boys and have their privacy away from the parents, and their sales increased. And it was not necessarily the video games, but the video games offered a space where they could act out like boys, right? So that's the example of abductive logic, right? You sit down, you don't know what the hell is going on, you try to eliminate all the preconceived notions and get the information coming in and try to observe what's going on, and based on the input, you draw a conclusion, right? Actually, you remember the book IDEO. No, it's not the book IDEO, but the CEO of IDEO, I believe it's called Tim Brown. I don't know what the name of the book is. Let's see. This one actually talks about this too. So this one has an example where they're trying to design a product for a hospital, and they have no idea. Well, I mean, they have an idea, but they don't know what it's like to be an actual patient. So what they did, they pretended to be a patient, and they sat down as a patient. Sorry, I had to pause the video for the mine came in. But to get back to my train of thought, yeah, this is Change by Design, which also talks about design thinking, and it's pretty much the application of abductive logic into the corporate world, like the real world, and your product development or business. So this is actually a pretty good book too. I should have added it to the previous video I did. How to think that it did. Also, you might have a combination of how you design something or how you approach it depending on business, but you might have business with two different systems, right? So you might have a part of the business developing a product or actually producing, like a factory, and you might have another one that's sales or customer service. So if I remember correctly, Abduction organization, right? So there should be some Wikipedia article. There should be a Harvard article I read a while back. Bum, 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 bum. This one is, yes, it's a pretty old article. I really like this one. I remember I did it really in 2004. I read it much later on, but this one was a pretty good read. Yes, I didn't know it was this old. I'm not sure how outdated it is, but if I remember this correctly, pretty much it was talking about how some corporations realize, you know how you have that whole, what do you call it, the black belt, what do you call it, that the form of management, like, let's see, Six Sigma, that's the bullshit. So Six Sigma works really well on a closed system like a factory. But what they were doing is that they were like, "Oh, yeah, awesome! This works great. We should apply this into customer service and sales and stuff like that," which doesn't make any sense. So the problem was this: they didn't realize, yeah, depending on the goddamn system you're in, the logic or management you're doing has to change. Right, Six Sigma, which, if I understand correctly, and I mean, kind of, or didn't. I remember in business school, taking classes, and I really was not really interested in it. But pretty much, it's like you have a closed system, and you pretty much applying deductive logic to it. If I remember correctly, this company called 3M used to have this. Let's see. There you go. Six Sigma killed innovation. 3M. There you go. So you got all these articles. So 3M, if I remember correctly, started applying the ambidextrous organization principles. So pretty much what this is saying is that, yeah, you have some parts of your company that are going to have a closed system, and you have to apply deductive logic. It's based in mind way to explain it. And you're going to have some parts of the company that are open systems, like innovation, like a product design, sales, customer service, or complex systems even. Like if product design, probably complex systems, or if you're working in the executive or upper management, and you're trying to expand the business and trying to find new products and new markets, that's going to be a complex system. So depending on what part of what type of system you're working on in that organization, you have to apply different management methods and different logic behind it. And that's where the ambidextrous organization comes from. And all right, this is probably a pretty good idea to go read on these. I mean, I haven't reviewed this in a while. I would definitely want to read it again. But anyways, this video always turns out to be a lot longer than I expected. I hope you have a better idea of what systems are, what type of logic to apply to it, and some real-world examples. And maybe you can go ahead and do a little research. I might look into this later on myself. Thank you.